good to go to Eretz Yisrael, were not able, different reasons, excuses, but nevertheless, that caused the people to came back that night. It said they cried, they murmured in their tents. What night was that? When did they come back? Tisha B'Av. So our sages tell us in the Gemara that you caused for nothing. Here I am about to bring you into the biggest gift for the world, to connect the Jewish people in the land of Israel, which enables this flow of energy, of godliness, of goodness, of holiness, to uplift the world, to plug in the world to the source. The Jews in Eretz Yisrael, as we saw, is the vehicle to express to enable such goodness to come to the world. And you cried for nothing. You didn't want that. You refused that great gift. I'll give you a reason to cry. And I would say that's why throughout the ages, the day of suffering, the ages of bad tidings, on the day of Tisha B'Av. What else took place on Tisha B'Av? Destruction of the first temple, destruction of the second temple, Beitar was destroyed. What else?
Holocaust.
What the Holocaust? When on Tisha B'Av, it lasted for a few years, the Holocaust. Before that, in 1260, anyone from
England.
Fair. Expulsion of the Jews from England. 1492.
Spanish.
Right? No, the expulsion from Spain in Tisha B'Av. What? On that day, Tisha B'Av? Yeah, look it up. Ken. Also, they attempted to, the plan was the expulsion from Gush Katif was on Tisha B'Av. But then the nation people, they woke up and they said that's already too much to do it on Tisha B'Av, so they pushed it off. But it was planned for. They didn't pay attention, whatever the non-Jewish dates. But it was supposed to be on Tisha B'Av, unfortunately. And also, like you said, World War I believe, began on Tisha B'Av. But it says, the rabbis say, that you despise the desirable land. In Tehillim, I'm going to give the recap of the sin of despise. You despise the desirable land. Masu be'eretz chemda. And that sin is what accompanies us throughout history, unfortunately. It's not a one-time thing. The Vilna Gaon writes, every time there's a little piece of that sin, as we see, we're still paying the price since then. But not only that the punishment, but also the sin repeats itself. That the Jews, usually when they get settled in and nice and comfortable in a certain place, now they say we don't have to go. When it's bad, they're praying to God, get us out of here, let us go, let us leave Miami. It's so awful and unlivable. Then Jews want to come. But when it's good, there's a midrash that says that Reshit Rabbah 33 about the Yonah, the dove, that Noach sent out the dove. What happened? He sent out the dove. Every time it went out, it didn't find rest, and it came back. The rabbis say, had she found rest, she would have not have returned. The commentary is there, to Eretz Yisrael. Similarly, the Jews dwelled among the nations but found no rest in Eicha. Had she found rest, had the Jews found rest outside of the land of Israel, she would not have returned. Similarly, and among those nations you will not be tranquil. There will be no rest for the sole of your foot, in Devarim 28. Had they found rest, they would not have returned to Eretz Yisrael, the commentary says. When they have it good, they don't want to return. Now there's no need to leave. Everything is good. The Khatam Sofer writes that God wants us to come out of our own volition, our own desire. Not because we're pushed out, thrown out, or have to run away, flee from pogroms. The idea that the Jews come out of the understanding, so God, he says, he brings down this historical phenomenon, like it was a few hundred years ago, that Jews are now given equal rights. Emancipation, the Jews are equal, they're human beings, they have rights, religious freedom. So then, you think, no, now they would come, now they can come, they pray 3 times a day, let us come back to Yerushalayim, to Eretz Yisrael, every Pesach, Yom Kippur, the night, next year in Jerusalem. So the gates are open, and then, you think ironically, the Jews then don't come back, because when the gates are open, when now they found rest, they don't want to come back. This book actually, The Rise from the Dust, a friend of mine learned with him in Merkaz Harav, came from New York. Tzvi He was murdered. Friday night, they had a B'nai Akiva. They were singing outside after the prayers, outside the Beit Hadassah. The Arab terrorists opened fire, killed 6 of them. 1980. But he managed before that to write this book about Eretz Yisrael, the centrality, the significance, the obligation to come to Eretz Yisrael. He went to all the rabbis telling them, why don't you wake up the Jews and tell them they have to come? And then he tried to get everyone. Again, he writes these sources. The second half is the halachic side of how the obligation to come deals with all the sources, the obligation to come. We read last week, right? The Ramban, mitzvah number 4, the obligation, even times of the exile, for every Jew to come to Eretz Yisrael. We mentioned, not a optional mitzvah. If you do it, it's a big thing. But an obligation, he writes, mitchayev kol echad, everyone, even at the time of the exile. The main mitzvah is to have Jewish autonomy, right? That it should be in our hands and not in the hands of others, right? The Ramban, mitzvah number 4, Nachmanides. But there's also the mitzvah on the individual to come, even when you don't have that Jewish jurisdiction, there's sovereignty, there's no state, there's still obligation to come. And he brings all the sources. It's amazing what he did. But the first half is this historical phenomenon, like I said, this repeating phenomenon that the Jews don't come back to the land of Israel. Every mitzvah, they're meticulous, doing exactly the extra credit, the chumrot, etc. When it comes to this mitzvah, there is this phenomenon, repeating phenomenon, that the Jews don't come back. And he brings a lot from the Shir Shirim, the Song of Songs, that she's looking for her beloved, she wants to connect to Hashem, and then her beloved knocks. Rav Soloveitchik has a thing, the 5 knocking, called the Dido fake. God knocks on he's coming, he says, no, the gates are open, Balfour Declaration, the San Remo, the Jews can come back, the gates are open, and then you think everyone go running. Right, San Remo, what was the Balfour Declaration, 1917, San Remo ratified, 1920, 22, League of Nations, and they didn't come. Just like after the first temple was destroyed, and after Purim, right, before Purim, we had the Koresh Declaration. Koresh, the non-Jewish king, idol-worshipping king, said the Jews can go back to Eretz Yisrael. God inspired him, it says, right, the book of Ezra. Inspired him, Mashiach Hashem, he calls him the Mashiach. The Mashiach, the messenger of God, to enable the Jews to come back. The gates are open. How many came back? 42,000. It says in the book of Ezra. The majority didn't want to leave. Why? The Kuzari says they didn't want to leave their homes and their businesses. But they had it good. But what happens afterwards in the beloved knocking? And then she doesn't want to get up. She says, I just changed my clothes. I got into pajamas. I'm comfortable. Pashat Tikkuta, right? The Song of Songs. And then she goes, I miss him. Now maybe I do want to go. And then it's too late. Then the gates are closed. And then she goes out running to look for her beloved, the Hashem. And then she gets beaten by the guards on the way. In other words, then it's problems and not so simple. And the Gemara says in Yuma, page 9b, that the Shekhinah was ready to come back in the second temple. You have the Kuzari here.
Over there, across from you.
That's the Mitzvah Kuzari. Is that the real one? We'll try that one. Can you get that? The Kuzari on the left. Yeah, no, on the right. Yeah, no, the next one, the blue, the black, the brown.
This one?
Yeah, the Kuzari. Translation. But right, there's a whole book, the Kuzari, Rabbi Yehuda Levi, 1,000 years ago, how this dialectic, the discussion with the king and the rabbi to find how to connect to a God, how to find, to connect to the source beyond, the religion. He has an answer for everything, and yet, when he gets to section 2, where are the numbers? 24, 20, he talks about Eretz Yisrael, the centrality, how important it is. From section 2, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, he talks about Eretz Yisrael. And then he says, if it's so important, like you've been telling me all these pages up till now, all the sources, a lot of sources we've been bringing down. We talk about the significance, the centrality of Eretz Yisrael, what it means to be here, connected to Hashem, the full impact of the mitzvot in the land of Israel. So if it's true that this place is so holy, you're not fulfilling the commandments of religion. What are you doing here, outside of Israel? You should be making your life's endeavor to reach that place and abode there. And it seems that all your bowing and kneeling in the direction of the land is only for the sake of appearances, like one who flatters another and praises him, without actually meaning it. In Hebrew, I remember, it's like a chirping of a parakeet. You're praying to Eretz Yisrael, right? You point your feet every day, 3 times. You pray to Yerushalayim, everything Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. It's just like a voice of a parakeet. You're just saying the words. You don't really mean it, without actually meaning it. Here, the translation in English here, you have humiliated me greatly, O king. In the other Hebrew, the Vashtani, you embarrassed me. No, I have no answer for this. You got me there. And this is the sin of not ascending to the land of Israel that has precluded the completion of the divine promise concerning the return of the divine presence to the second temple. Had the Jews come back, the second temple would have been the returning of the Shekhinah, the divine presence, right? 5 things were missing in the second temple. The Aron and the Shekhinah and prophecy. And this is what held it up, because the Jews didn't come back. Only 42,000 came back. And who were they? The Mishnah, the Gemara, and in Kiddushin, chapter 4. These 10 castes, lowest levels of the Jews. The people that didn't know who their father was, Mamzeri, people didn't know, not the elite. The elite stayed back, like he says, and you'll see here, didn't want to leave their homes and businesses. We're waiting for the real redemption. Now, the second temple, this is nothing. This isn't the real. We're waiting for God to come down from heaven. The majority didn't want to come back for whatever reasons. Like he says throughout, that it's a difficult thing. I was only after 70 years in exile, not 2,000 years. Because of that prevented the completion of the divine promise of returning the Shekhinah to the second temple. And he brings the prophecies. The divine flow was ready to and prepared to descend upon us, just as it descended during the nation's inception. The return of prophecy, or the connection of God in this world, literally, you could see it, tangible, that the nations would realize and see, like I said before, the blessing of God coming through the land of Israel to all, uplifting all of mankind. Had everyone been then ready to willingly return to the land. However, only a part of the nation returned to the land, 42,000 plus. Whereas the majority, including the leaders, the head guys, even the scholars, remained in Bavel. They chose to remain in exile and to serve the king, to be subordinate to the nations, not to leave their homes and businesses. And this is what it says in Shir HaShirim, I am asleep, but my heart is awake. This is like the Galut, where a person who sleeps, his senses or faculties are rest, but his heart still beats. Anyway, he talks about this and how the Jews didn't want to come back. And so too, like I said, throughout history, and he starts with Avram Avinu, this plague of this phenomenon of not going to Eretz Yisrael or hesitating to come back to the land. He says, Avram Avinu, I'll read you the Ramban on the Torah, that Avram Avinu committed a great sin unintentionally by putting his righteous wife in a situation that he was liable to sin. He put her right in that she was taken. Also his departure from the land of Israel, about which he had been commanded at first, Lech Lecha, go to the land of Israel. He was told to go, and he left because of the famine. The famine, you're allowed to go. It's only a high level. The Rambam writes it. We'll get to that, Machlon and Elimelech. But nevertheless, I'll read the Ramban. He was commanded to stay there, and he left because of the famine. It was also a sin that he committed, for God in famine will deliver him from death. And because of this deed, his descendants were condemned to exile in Egypt. And the source, Tzvi brings down, the source, the Holy Zohar, Rabbi Yehuda says, since Avram went down to Egypt without permission, his descendants were subjugated in Egypt for 400 years. All the slavery, all the thing in Egypt was because that Avram left Eretz Yisrael. It says he's on the way to Eretz Yisrael, Lech Lecha, he started going, and then he stopped in Haran, and then the rabbi said he was thrown into the furnace. Nimrod, he also says, so too in the future. We refuse to go, and he throws us into the fiery furnace. Just like Avram was cast into the fiery furnace in Ur Kasdim, it was a hint that he should go and get up and go. Leave Haran and go to Eretz Yisrael. And then he goes, the only one who was exempt from this was Yitzchak. He, born in Israel, lived in Israel, died in Israel. He was the holy, right? He says he was up for the altar. all sacrificed almost. It says outside of Israel is not worthy of you. You can't be there. So he never left Eretz Yisrael. But later, when the Jews came down from when they were in Egypt, then it says at the end of Parshat Vayigash, Vayechazu ba'ma'od. They held on to the land. They became. I'll read you what the Kli Yakar, one of the classic commentaries on the verse. It says Israel. The verse says in Vayigash, in the end of Breshit, Israel settled in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they took possession therein, and they grew and multiplied greatly. So very successful in Goshen, right? They were separate. The Egyptians were there. The Jews were in Goshen, and they had their autonomy and living fine. The Kli Yakar says this entire verse accuses the children of Israel. It's a accusation of the bad that the Jewish people did. For the God decreed that your descendants will be strangers in a land not theirs. And they, however, sought to settle, v'yachazu, achizah, to be ezrachim, to be citizens. And it says you'll be strangers, gerim atemti, right? The curse was, the punishment, you'll be strangers in a foreign land. And they didn't live as strangers. They started to live as settlers in a place where it was decreed that they should be strangers. And the verse reproaches them for this settling, for they sought a portion in the land not theirs. They became so settled in Egypt that they did not want to leave, until the Holy One, blessed be, had to take them out forcibly. And those who still didn't want to leave died when?
In the plague of darkness.
The 3 days of darkness. As it says, the rabbis say that the Jews didn't want to leave. The Midrash says, what are you doing in a place? Many of the Jews wanted Moshe to save them from subjugation. They didn't want to be slaves. It was bad being slaves. But they asked Moshe just to make us free people here. And then we can be religious and you can be frum and do the mitzvot here also. We don't have to go to Eretz Yisrael. Let's stay here. Not under slavery. They asked him to be free men in Egypt. So they would not have to leave their birthplace. They were born there. Generations already born there. Tzvi Fishman said, right, and Moshe Rabbeinu told the Jews, told Paro, let my people go. And now in America, with all that's going on, all the anti-Semitism and the campuses, whatever you can tell me about what's going on there, now all the leaders are fighting to get rid of anti-Semitism, so let my people stay. Get rid of the anti-Semitism, get rid of the bad things, and let us live as equals again, to be Jews in America, not to leave, not to get up and go, let my people go. Please let them stay. Let there be free men in Egypt, so they would not have to leave their homes, their birthplace. Therefore, God said that they must leave Egypt to ensure that they would not learn from the Egyptians, etc. And Tzvi Glad continues, how astounding, even after the awe-inspiring divine revelation that took place during the first plagues, blood, frogs, lice, etc., this weakness remained intact. But God is not forbearing when we cling to foreign soil. Even though the merit and the covenant of the patriarchs protected us on the Red Sea, here, it didn't help, and those that were killed, the Midrash he brings down, they were the wicked Jews. Who were the ones who died? They were the 3 days of darkness. Why? They were wicked Jews who were the Egyptian friends and who enjoyed honor and fortune in Egypt. They had it good. There were some Jews. They did not want to leave. The Holy One, blessed be, if I smite them publicly, they die. The Egyptians will say, just as we are suffering, so are they. Up to now, all the plagues that the Jews were exempt. These are the Egyptians were suffering. They had blood and the Jews were drinking water, etc. All the plagues, they were separate. You see the hand of God directly on the Jewish people. If now they're also dying. Up to now it was a coincidence, but now you see that they're dying and we're dying, so it's no different. So therefore God said he brought darkness upon the Egyptians for 3 days so that the Jews would bury their dead without their enemies notice. But who are the dead? Those that, it says the evil people, that's what the rabbis call them, Midrashim, the Poshim Shalor Tzulateh, that didn't want to leave.
Isn't that like most? Isn't there like a big?
Ken, this week's, in Shemot it says, Chamushim alu. In Hebrew, Chamushim, what does Chamush mean? Chamush is one of the meanings, is they went up armed. Chamush, like with neshek, like to people, a soldier is armed. But also from the Lashon, the root is Chamesh, 5. So what you mentioned, what's your name?
David.
David said, this is the Midrash, the Mechilta, the Midrash Halacha and Shmot. Only 1 out of every 5, Chamesh, 1 out of every 5 went up with Egypt, out of Egypt. 20%. 80% were didn't make it out. The Holocaust. 80% didn't make it out. But the Midrash goes on. Some say 1 out of 50. Chamishim. Right? Chamushim. And others say 1 out of 500. Rabbi Nuharai says, I swear, not even 1 out of 5,000 went up. 0.001%. We celebrate Pesach, leaving Yetziat Mitzrayim, leaving of Exodus. Tiny percent left. The maximum, Rashi on the Torah brings their 20%. It brings the 1 out of 5 interpretation, explanation. But let's say, okay, that's 20%. But a small minority left. And when would the others die? During the 3 days of darkness, no man saw his brother, for they, the Jews, were burying their dead, and they thanked and praised God for the fact that their enemies did not see this and rejoiced at their downfall. So that, again, you'd think after all that suffering in Egypt, the Jews, when the gates opened, they would leave. No, they wanted to. It was hard to leave. So like I said, it's not something new today. This is a phenomenon that repeats itself. And the sin of despise, ultimately, after that, once the few Jews that did leave, here we are in the desert. Now God says, go to Israel. They sent the spies to see what's the best place to go to. We're supposed to go in natural means, the Ramban says. You go to war, you have to know how to prepare, where to go in, but he also thought, Moshe Rabbeinu, the rabbis explained, thought that they would come back with these messages to extol the Jewish people, to show the grandeur, the beauty of Eretz Yisrael, with great fruits, and great people, what a great land it is. They would come back with the message to raise the enthusiasm of the Jews to come in at Eretz Yisrael. Instead of that, they saw big fruits and big people. Oh, it's so big that we can't go there, we can't conquer them, they're too big for us. We're like tiny people. We're like chagavim, grasshoppers, in their own eyes. If you're what you think of yourself, that's what you think other people think you, or that's how you determine how other people think you. You're small, you're nothing. They said, Lo naleh, we can't make it, we can't do it. Hezbollah, these people are too strong, there's no way, we don't have the chance. We talked about that a little bit last week. Rav Yaakov Emden, on the Sidur, on what we pray Friday night, we sing, don't harden your hearts as at Merivah on the day of Masa, right in the beginning of the Chunah at the end there. For 40 years I despised the generation. Arbaim Shana, everyone sings it. A nice happy tune, whatever. What are we saying there? For 40 years I despised the generation. I said they are people of erring hearts and did not know my ways. Therefore I swore in my anger that they would not enter my land of rest. I'll kill them and wipe them out. All those that participated in this sin of despise, all the elders, from 20 to 60, did not enter the land. So Moshe says, but if you kill them all at once, they'll think that you weren't able to go into the land against the 31 kings, that you had strength against Paro, one king, but 31, you can't do it, so you killed them all there. And Moshe says, no, bring them into the land to show them that you're strong and there won't be a desecration of your name. So God said, okay, I won't kill them all at once. I'll do it all in a natural way. Every year, the ones that reach whatever a certain age, 60 years, they all die. And then that whole generation that participated will not enter the land of Israel. There was no forgiveness. The sin of the golden calf, they were forgiven. The sin of the spies, there was no forgiveness. They were didn't make it. So here, Rav Yaakov Emden, how does the comment on this? He has a Sidur, the Beit Yaakov. What's his commentary on this verse that we sing in Psalms? Moshe Rabbeinu said these Psalms in reference to the future. Do not harden your hearts. He saw prophetically that there would be people who would not want to leave the diaspora and go to Eretz Yisrael. Can you imagine that? You have to be a big prophet for that.
I mean, he also was into Islam.
Ken. We read that once. You should hear his introduction. He had all this praise of Eretz Yisrael and how you're not supposed to just point your feet, etc., etc. You have to go, you have to be. And then he says, no, what about me? He says it. It wasn't like today, you pick up a plane. But never, you're right. He answers that. He explains. It's not, again, we judge then like today. Like now there's open gates and you go and it's free and you can be there in 2 hours. But he saw that in the future. Can you imagine that? There might be a phenomenon, unbelievably so, that there might be people who do not want to leave the diaspora and go to Eretz Yisrael. He therefore warned them and said, do not harden your hearts, as at Merivah, where the Jews quarreled with me, refusing to go to Eretz Yisrael because of the counsel of the spies. This is Masa. What is Masa? Melting, destruction. As on the day that I was decreed that they would perish in the desert over the span of 40 years because your forefathers had already tried me. I despised the generation. I was at strife with them and despised them, that I said there are people whose hearts have strayed from the proper path because they did not know my ways. Therefore I swore in my anger that they would not enter my land of rest. And this, like I said, is the prototype, unfortunately, throughout history, repeats itself, the sin and the punishment, the catastrophes on Tisha B'Av, but not only, that come within the path of when the Jews don't want to come. And he goes on, you should see the book, but he says, making Aliyah is an exceptional challenge. This is Tfilat Yishem Yikum Damo. The test is so difficult that it has the power to turn righteous people into the wicked ones. Because the Midrash says, Kulam Anashim. Who are the spies? The Pasuk says they're all Anashim. Rashi said, they bring them Chazal. He brings down Midbar Abba. They were chosen because they were righteous men, but they turned into evil ones, the Midrash says. Men means righteous individuals. But this difficulty of coming to Eretz Yisrael turns even righteous people can fall in this. It's so... there's another source that says, actually, Emily Smecha brings, at the beginning, I believe, a letter from Rabbi Gutmacher. It's because of the greatness of the mitzvah and the significance of what it does to the world that's why these forces come to hold it up, try to prevent it. Something small, the negative forces don't mind. But something so critical and crucial for the world, for the redemption, so there's forces that are equal and opposite to try to prevent it. So he brings down there Rav Gutmacher, Rav Eliyahu Gutmacher, the giant of Kaplan. In human intellect dictates that we initiate the process of redeeming. We have to do our part. Rav Gutmacher was one of those, the rabbis that you have to do, not just to wait for redemption, miraculous phenomena. Let God, when He wants, He'll bring us back. No, we have to get up and do all that we can do. And then God's help will be forthcoming. The whole book of Emelin Smicha talks about that and brings the sources for that. But he brings this letter at the beginning. So we have to do all that we can do, and then Hashem will complete it. One must understand the great importance of this matter. For the evil forces, the Klipa gain strength even among the most righteous individuals in order to nullify this good. It's not a new thing. We think, how can this rabbi be wrong? How can this rabbi not see what we all see? It's so simple to go to Eretz Yisrael, the commandment, the obligation, all the sources, and we see what happens when you don't come. They don't know this. They don't. It's not. It's a deep thing. It's a phenomenon. Again, the spies were the giants. Yeah.
So I go to school in Canada, Montreal, and I feel like when I talk to people about like, I think I want to make Aliyah. My parents want me to wait until after college, but whatever.
And then you get settled and you have enough money to buy a house again. And then there's
Yeah,
always
I
something
know,
more than.
I know.
No, you know the story.
Yeah. And there's always like this, like there's a few things that people always say, like a lot of it is they don't have faith in God. Like a lot of it is like, well, what if like Iran like sends a nuke? Like you have to have faith in God, like obviously to move to Israel. Another thing is like, it's not like I don't know if it's a valid point, but they say that what about like if all the Jews leave the diaspora, like what about like all like the hate of Jews will just it'll be like an echo chamber, just constant like people start hating it. Like if there's no Jews around, wouldn't people get even more and more like
They don't want us.
But if we weren't there,
I don't know,
who would they hate?
This is something that I don't
No,
know.
there's a lot of list of explanations or excuses or rationale why we should. I thought you were going to say that if we leave America, if the American Jews leave America, who's going to support Israel? Well, all the money that comes from America.
Stuff like that too.
All those kind of explanations. The anti-Semitism, if we're not there, the anti-Semitism, don't worry, they hate Israel anyway, the land. But anti-Semitism will find its victim. But you're right, there's a lot of explanations. The spies had their explanation. We mentioned a little bit. They have reasons. They were worried about the spiritual decline. We come to Eretz Yisrael after living in the desert, miracles, the bread from heaven and the water from the well, everything, the miracles, face to face with God. Your full day is empty, open just to learn Torah, connect to God. You go into Eretz Yisrael, you have to plant and work and army and service and miluim. What's going to be? Man does. He's going to forget God. He's going to think it's all me and forget God. So let's stay in the desert and be holy. Holiness detached from the practical world. In Eretz Yisrael, you're going to have to work, and that's the ideal. God wants you to work and to find God, to reveal God in this world, not to be in a monastery. That's not Judaism. The holiness that will be found in this world, in the physical, with the body, with the heaven and earth, soul and body. That's the ideal, to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. But the spies said they knew better. As the rabbis say in the Midrash Kohelet, chapter 7, the verse says, Al tiyeh tzaddik harbe, don't be overly righteous. The rabbis add, don't be more righteous than your creator. Like you know better than God. God says to go to Eretz Yisrael. You say, no, but it's dangerous. Again, spiritually, the other people said it's dangerous physically. How can we go against these giants? But the spies, they were giants of Torah. They were worried about, again, a spiritual cause. Many reasons, explanations, which seem very legitimate. But God says, and he knows better. He knows that that's the idea. It's definitely a challenge. It's definitely more difficult to live in a monastery as if to be holy and separate from the world and not to deal with anything physical. But that's not Torah. That's not Judaism. That's not the goal. Is to fix this one, not to leave the world in its ugliness and its whatever, and its physicality and the hedon, all the evils and suffering, and then we just fly off and live like angels. No, like the Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotz, the Kotzker Rebbe said on the verse in Tehillim we say in Hallel, the heavens are unto God, and the earth He gave to man. Right? Shamayim Lashem, that He gave. He says the heavens are unto God, and the earth God gave to man to turn them into heaven, to turn the earth into heaven, to sanctify this world. What do we say in Kedusha? Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam kishem shemakdishim oto b'shem olam. To sanctify God in this world like the angels sanctify in the heaven. They sanctify God. He has angels that say, and then clearly they recognize Him and praise, so to speak, and bring down His name. But God created us to sanctify His name in this world, in the more difficult. Yes, it's more difficult and challenging. But the Torah has the power to do so, and that's the whole goal, to sanctify God's name, not where it's easy, not to show that there's nothing outside of God. Otherwise, that's why Christianity is idolatry. It's saying as if from here up, from here is the devil, and from here up is God. To reach God, to connect to God is only from here up, like the spiritual and up, to save the soul. The body, the original sin, immaculate sin, whatever, that you can't sin, you can't save that, you can't save society. Right? The first Christians that went on their way to the caves, and Yamamelach, the Asians, whatever, to be holy. Society prevents you from reaching holy aspirations. You have to deal with the physical and the mundane and to leave the physical. But that's idolatry because again, it's the Avodah Zarah, saying there's two dominions. There's God and there's the devil. There's the physical and the spiritual. And our goal is the oneness of God is not just a goal. No, that's the reality. That God's light and goodness created all to live and to use it, and to live it and use it properly. Not to run away from life. To live life, but a holy life. To be a kingdom of priests and holy nation. A nation, government, army, politics, agriculture, and all of that is holy. So the spy said, no, but it's easier, it's better, it's safer. That's true. In other words, it's easier, but that's not the goal. That's not Torah. That's not the divine ideal. That's not the oneness of God. That's supposed to be brought to. That's not saving the world. It says in the end of Shabbat, "L'taken olam b'malchut Shaddai," to fix this world under God's kingdom. So anyway, like you said, there's a lot of excuses and a lot of different reasons. I came to Israel for a year. My parents said, "Say that, but just for a year, then come back to university. You're not a human being. In America, Canada, I guess. You're not a human being if you don't go to university." So I came to a year in Israel, then I felt another year in yeshiva, maybe to know to what it is to be Jewish, more understand, and then I started learning what Eretz Yisrael was, and then I realized that, so I didn't go to university. I'm still here from that year, and then my parents came, then Baruch Hashem, all the family came. But at the beginning, it was like you said, you have to go to university, you're not a human being, how are you going to work, how are you going to do it, how are you going to succeed in life? But if you understand what is Eretz Yisrael, what it means to be here, what it means for the world, not just for you personally, the commandment, for the world, for the nation, for creation. It takes belief, like you said, but it's also more, there's, so to speak, evidence for that belief. Read this book and you'll see what happens when we don't. In other words, it's even on a practical level. It's so important that God won't let us. He doesn't let us stay in the exile. Like it says, if you found... What did we say? If you found tranquility and peace, if they found rest outside the land, they wouldn't return. So God, unfortunately, had left with no choice, as if. So how's He going to get us back? Rise from dust. Right from the dust. So what's the other choice? In other words, if you don't come by your own volition, then the only other choice, so to speak, is then I'll tell you what in Yechezkel chapter 20. It's also this historical overview of the Jews forgetting God, and then God's about to destroy them. But for my name's sake, I won't do so because God's name is revealed to the Jewish people. He can't destroy us, so to speak. He can't physically, but the whole goal of His name is to show that Am Yisrael comes out in spite of all and through all. The nation will be redeemed, the world will be fixed and elevated and brought to its ultimate goal. That's not an if. The question is how. So the Jews sin, and the prophet over and over says it, but for my name's sake, I won't let you to be destroyed. I'll bring you back. And then it says also the Jews say, let's stay in the exile. And He says, no, I'll bring you back for my name's sake, with a fury poured out, an outstretched arm, like in Egypt. The commentaries explain that Mitzudat David, chapter 20, I think verse 33, 34. chapter 20 in Yechezkel, verse 33, 34, I believe. The commentary, the Mutzudat David, says there, I'll put the hate in the hearts of the nation, and they will remind you that you're not at home. You think you're at home. I have a Los Angeles, my Los Angeles Times article I bring sometimes. The headline is what? You guys know it by heart, most of the time of you. There is nothing an Orthodox Jew needs that isn't here. In the picture, they have a kosher deli, kosher this. Now in LA, you saw what happened recently, right?
I live in LA. It was on my street.
Pico Robertson,
Yeah.
the famous Pico Robertson. I was from the Valley. But the article says there how we have everything. We have the picture there, woman in the mikveh. They have everything, not in the standing next to the mikveh, and the rabbi with the books and the kosher, how do you say, delicatessen, kosher candies and chocolates. So what are we missing? So we have everything we need. And what the title was, there's nothing an Orthodox Jew needs that isn't here. When it gets to that point, when the Jews know that they're like a person in the hospital, he's sick, he knows he's sick, he wants to go to the hospital. The problem is when the person thinks he's at home, he thinks, I don't have to go away. I'm living in the hospital. This is fine. This is normal. This is where I live. Like it says here, the Jews just wanted to make it to be free in Egypt. We don't have to leave America. Just let us stay. Let us have rights and equality and get rid of anti-Semitism. Now we can finally stay in peace. So then it says there in the verse, or again, the commentary, I'll put the hate in the hearts of the nations, and they'll remind you that this isn't your home. So again, it's not like a new thing. It's something you have to really believe in God. Look at history. See the reality. I said this book especially points it out. And he brings on, I'm not going to continue. You can read the book yourself. But I think they have in the office here a few copies. But he goes on through the modern days. In other words, through after Ezra and Nehemiah, that called the Jews to go back after the Second Temple. He went to the Jews in, he brings down the sources from, I'm skipping a lot, but Jerba and, where was it, Teman, Yemen, and he cursed them. Ezra cursed them, and they came about that all these places didn't succeed. They have this tradition that they come to the curse of Ezra, that they refused to come back. And then also Rav Meir Simcha from Vinsk, a great rabbi, the Or Sameach, has a commentary on the Torah, the Meshech Chochmah, and he writes in Parshat Bechukotai, we read not too long ago. He gives this whole, again, historical overview that the Jews get to a new place in exile. Let's say they go to Bavel. What do they sing in Bavel? Al Narat Bavel, we sit in the rivers of Babylon, and they ask us to sing the song of God. How can we sing the song of God in an impure land? They're crying, right? They're crying, they were in exile. And then the next generation gets used to it. The third generation is born there. Get used to the exile. They set up yeshivot, we have Torah, we have mitzvot. And they say, what is missing here in, fill in the line, in this place that we're now here? We have everything we need, Shabbat, Kashrut, and this. Great. And then he says, Yor Sameach, who died in the 1930s, he says, will come up a ruach sarah, like a hurricane, will come up and wake you up and remind you. Oh, well, he says before that, he says they'll get to the point that they think Berlin, Yerushalayim. That's the example he gives. They'll get to the point they think we have a new Jerusalem. Berlin is the new Jerusalem. We have everything we need here. People saying it today, unbelievably. People today, the Jewish community in Berlin. The great-grandson of Rav Teichtel is the rabbi there in Berlin. And he says there, the Jews will get to that point when they think that Berlin is Jerusalem, and then as if, like I said, God has no choice. So he has to get them out of exile. They can't stay. If you know that you don't belong there, there's hope that the minute the gates open, you'll leave because you want to get out. But if you don't want to get out, you yourself are so at home there. So then the other way is, like I said, and like I said, and the rabbis say, and the Yechezkel says, God says, and then the Or Sameach writes, when you think that Berlin is Jerusalem, there'll be this hurricane, Ruach Sarah, a wind will rise up and get you out, those who get out, those who are left out alive. Like the Vilna Gaon used to cry every day and say to his students, these students write, in the name of the Vilna Gaon, our teacher, our master used to cry every day telling us, bringing the verse, a remnant will be left in Jerusalem. Those who will be left alive will be in Jerusalem. Not everyone will make it. And he told them every day, get out before it's too late. And the students of Vilna Gaon came in 1800 to facilitate the redemption process. It's now time the Jews to come back and rebuild the land of Israel for the sake of redemption. Maybe I'll read you, maybe next week, speech of Rav Kook from the 1933, right before, realizing what's going on. And they gave a speech on Rosh Hashanah talking about the 3 ways the Jews come back to Israel. 3 shofarot, 3 ways of awakening the Jews to come back. And like I said, there's the good way, the ideal way, for the ideal, understanding what it means to attach yourself to God and to bring this world to connect to God, enable this blessing to all creation. And if not, there's other ways. He brings that one thing, last thing. He brings down the Rabbi Mitzmecha, Rav Techtel, says there's 2 ways to buy an animal. If I can find it. There's 2 ways you buy an physically or halakhically acquisition. You can either you bring the animal to your possession, like you can't pick it up. Usually you buy thing acquisition is made by lifting it up and making, putting it in your possession. How do you pick up a cow? Whatever. You bring it to your possession, to your domain, or you hit it from the back and it goes right into your. So he says here that the example is, I think what Rabbi writes it, that there's ways that Jews come back to Israel, they run before Hashem, and if not, he says they wait until the staff comes and strikes us. Pushes it from the back. The best way is to run after you. God places in our hearts to come back. But if not, the afflictions that come upon the people are because they not crave Eretz Yisrael, to push us, to wake us, to come back to Eretz Yisrael. The hard way. God forbid we shouldn't wait for that. But again, it's not just because of the problems that we come to Israel. Be the opposite. Because we don't come to Israel, that's why there's problems. In other words, God has to bring about, will bring about this fulfillment of this ideal for all of creation, to bring good to all of mankind. If we can't hold that up. That's the whole purpose of creation, is to unfold and to get to that situation. We have free will to participate, or as if to go against this tidal wave, but that it can't be stopped. God will bring this good, this absolute good, to bring to, and that's brought about through the Jews back to the land of Israel. So God will bring the Jews back to the land of Israel, as He's been doing the last 150 years. Those who don't awake for that, then again, they can't stand up against this tidal wave of God's good, of blessing. So the consequences are very painful. In other words, if you try to go against this plan, like the baby that tries to stay in the womb, it's nice and comfortable there, but then there's contractions that force out. So hopefully the Jews, the more we understand and learn, and this actually will wake up the Jewish soul, that will have this feeling of coming back to the ideal, for the sake of the ideal, for the sake of the good. What unbelievable blessing, again, not just for us personally or nationally, for the world, for creation. To bring that about soon in our days, and see the fulfillment of this redemption. Amen.
Right.